This is Inevitable by Leonard B. King. It's meeting new people that's the hardest. Of course, what could I expect? When before I even know someone's name, before I even shake their hand, I know exactly when and how they'll die. I'd always known about my own death, of course. Trouble was, I thought everyone else knew. When I was a kid, my mother's cries of, "Now don't play in the street, you could get yourself killed," were met by me as a toddler with a firm, "No, I won't, Mommy." And at the time, it seemed wrong somehow to tell her precisely how or why I knew that. But at least back then, my death was the only thing I could see. Out of everyone, though, I think seeing her death hit me the hardest. Actually, for both of us. All right, imagine one day you're sitting at home. You're making your kid peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch, and all of a sudden you look up and your son is clamped onto your leg, snot flying, tears running down his chin, and he's blubbering about hospitals and wilted get-well bouquets, and your too pale, sickly-looking skin contrasting with what he'd been familiar with, what he'd always known. And after that, it just got worse. It started with just people I knew well, I'd say. Didn't matter who it was or how they died, I'd see it eventually. Then it just got more frequent, with people I wasn't familiar with, to the point where I'd say hello and then take it from there. It's only really bad when I'm unfamiliar with people, which granted doesn't happen often these days. After the vision about my mom, I dedicated my life to oncology. Knowing which patients are going to die and when actually helps, despite the fact that I can do nothing to change their fate. It wasn't long before a former colleague caught on, and from there it was only a matter of time till the government figured me out and sent the CIA knocking at my door. Funny how that works out, isn't it? "Mr. Ernesto, they're ready for you." Now, I nod at the middle-aged blonde secretary. She's just doing her job. I can't fault her too much when I'm here doing mine. She's going to get hit by a car in 6 months. A hit and run. Her name is on the badge the feds gave her, same as mine. And I'm sure she's introduced herself at one point, but it's always better for both of us if I don't remember it. It makes things easier when I don't have to put a name to a face. I'm sitting in a small waiting room, no different from any other. And quite frankly, I've wondered since I was a kid if all the waiting rooms in all the world are actually just the same room leading out to different places. Like the doctor's office, the dentist's office, your lawyers, your banker, or in my case, a high-security military laboratory somewhere underneath Langley. Yeah. Miss Secretary escorts me to the office. The pale wrinkles in her face hidden beneath a caked-on makeup style that only women her age really wear these days. This job's nothing major, at least not compared to that done by some of the other people who work here. I can't leave town unsupervised, but I'm also not risking my life by cooperating. I stay in my government-approved apartment with 2 CIA agents standing guard at the door. Good news, by the way, neither of them are going to die until they're well into retirement. Then they escort me to my next appointment. I come here and do whatever it is they want this time. As far as a kidnapped by the government gig goes, this ain't half bad. Still, there's nothing that makes you miss freedom more than not having it anymore. 3 men and 2 women are lined up at the other end of the office, standing perfectly straight in front of an old dude who I can only assume is their boss, and refusing to make eye contact with me. Miss Secretary turns to leave. So, it's one of those days. They're not particularly attractive folk, but they're not ugly either. The woman on the left has skin so dark it almost blends with the pantsuit she's wearing. Her hair is tied back in a bun, and she looks like she won't care no matter what I tell her. The other is as pale as a sheet, and though she's not looking at me, I can see some of the perspiration on her brow. You see, no one likes knowing how they're going to die. Not in this line of work, at least. The man next to her has skin like mine, little ruddy, but his face betrays no emotion I can discern. No, that's all concentrated in his hands. They're tightly clenched behind his back. Now, the youngest is next to him. He's not as pale as the woman opposite his buddy, but he's still pale and looks like he's fresh out of college. Probably hasn't seen the sun in quite a while. He's the only one who looks like whatever I say will come as a relief to him. Out of the 5, he's probably the most dangerous. Next to him is an older man. Nice tan. I can see some gray hairs peeking over the ears. He probably doesn't realize they're there yet. He's quaking in his boots, but just his boots. I walk down the line. 80. Sniper fire from some kid wanting revenge. 45. Enemy spy compromises your position, killed on sight. 53. Car crash on your way to the Pentagon. 35. Tortured to death. Oh, wow, that's interesting. What's interesting? The boss asked, eyebrows raised, arms folded. Okay, you're in a hostage negotiation. You're the hostage. The kidnapper's surrounded by maybe 20 snipers. Out in the parking lot they are. Made it pretty far if you ask me. There's a bead of sweat growing between the 7 of us. I took the moment to step back and think for a bit. To think of my mother. Stage 4 tumors ravaging her body in a hospital bed that I know no amount of research or wishful thinking will fix. I know there's no changing fate. In a flash, I'm behind the last agent. His gun is in my hand and I've got him in a chokehold before the others can draw their guns. Well, let's get started, I tell these guys. I feel the man start to sway, his skin clammy as the realization that he's about to die sinks in. No one likes to know how they're going to die after all. If it's any consolation, I only outlive you by a few seconds. Then we start to back out the door.